Commander Tejo sat in his command chair aboard the massive human warship Iron Resolve. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as his crew monitored deep space communications. Red warning lights flickered across multiple screens, indicating emergency transmissions from across the galaxy. "Sir, we're getting something big," called out Communications Officer Minsu from his station. His fingers danced across holographic controls as he filtered through the static. "It's a Galactic Council emergency broadcast." Tejo leaned forward, his weathered face reflecting years of dangerous missions in the Outer Rim. The main view screen crackled to life, showing the familiar blue-skinned face of a council representative. The alien's usually calm demeanor had been replaced by barely controlled panic. "This is an urgent distress call," the council member announced, his voice shaking. "The research vessel Gentle Current is in critical danger. The ship belongs to the Zilani Scientific Expedition studying neutron star phenomena." Lieutenant Hyjin, Tejo's tactical officer, pulled up the coordinates on her console. Her eyes widened as she read the data. "Sir, they're talking about XK739. That's one of the most dangerous stellar objects in this sector." The council representative continued his broadcast, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. "The Gentle Current has suffered catastrophic system failures. Their orbit is decaying rapidly around the neutron star. We estimate 17 hours before the ship is pulled past the point of no return." Tejo studied the technical readouts scrolling across his screen. The neutron star's gravitational field was crushing anything that got too close. Radiation levels would cook most species alive within minutes. The magnetic field fluctuations could tear apart electronic systems from thousands of kilometers away. "All standard rescue protocols have been evaluated and rejected," the alien official admitted, his antenna drooping with defeat. "The extreme gravitational forces and radiation make any approach impossible for Council vessels. We are broadcasting this message to all ships in the region, though we hold little hope." Minsu looked up from his station. "Sir, should I open a channel?" Tejo nodded slowly. "Patch us through to the Council frequency." The bridge fell silent as Tejo activated his communication system. "Council Command, this is Commander Tejo of the Terran Deep Space Fleet. We received your distress call regarding the Zilani vessel." The alien representative's image flickered with surprise. "Commander Tejo, are you volunteering to assist with evacuation efforts?" "Negative, Tejo," replied calmly. "We're volunteering to respond to the emergency." Lieutenant Hyjin suppressed a grin. She had served under Tejo for 3 years and knew exactly what that meant. Humans didn't evacuate from dangerous situations. They fixed them. The council member's antenna began twitching nervously. "Commander, perhaps you don't understand the severity of the situation. The gravitational forces alone would crush any reasonable vessel attempting approach." Tejo exchanged a meaningful look with Hyjin before turning back to the screen. His expression remained perfectly calm, almost bored. "We're not reasonable," he said simply. "We're human." Council President Veltar stared at the holographic reports floating above his desk, his 4 eyes scanning the data with increasing concern. The emergency session had been called within minutes of the human fleet's response to the Zilani distress call. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species whispered nervously among themselves. "Bring up the human rescue statistics." Veltar commanded his aide, a nervous Vorthan whose scales had turned pale gray with stress. The numbers appeared in glowing text across the chamber's main display. 70% mission success rate. On the surface, it looked impressive, but Veltar had learned to read between the lines when it came to human operations. "Computer, define success in human rescue terminology," he requested. The AI's calm voice filled the chamber. "Success is defined as the preservation of alien life, regardless of secondary casualties, property damage, or psychological trauma, to rescued individuals." A collective shudder ran through the assembled aliens. The Regilian delegate's tentacles curled inward protectively, while the crystalline Zarian representative dimmed noticeably. "Patch me through to Admiral G1, Veltar ordered. Dreading the conversation he was about to have, the holographic projector flickered, revealing the face of the human naval commander. Admiral G1 looked exactly as Veltar remembered from their last encounter, scarred, weathered, and completely uninterested in diplomatic niceties. A jagged line ran from her left temple to her jaw, a souvenir from what humans casually referred to as that mining station incident. Admiral Veltar began carefully. "We appreciate your offer to assist with the Zilani situation. However, your rescue operations are, how should I put this delicately, quite aggressive." G1's expression didn't change. She sat in her command chair like a predator at rest, perfectly still, but ready to spring into action. "We get results, President Veltar. The Zilani crew wants to live. We make that happen." "Yes, but your methods," Veltar continued, his voice rising slightly. "Your last rescue operation involved ramming a cargo freighter directly through an asteroid field at full speed. Everyone survived," G1 stated flatly, as if this simple fact ended all discussion. Veltar pulled up the incident report, his hands shaking slightly. The rescued crew required 6 months of psychological rehabilitation. 3 of them still refused to board spacecraft. The asteroid field was completely destabilized, creating a navigation hazard for the next century. "Everyone survived," G1 repeated, emphasizing each word. "The insurance claims from that operation are still being processed." Veltar pressed on desperately. The total damage assessment reached into the billions of credits. G1's scarred face finally showed an expression, mild irritation. "Not our problem." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Veltar stared at the empty holographic space where the Admiral had been, feeling a familiar sense of dread settling in his stomach. "Sir?" his aide whispered urgently. "We're receiving fleet movement reports from the human territories." The main display updated, showing tactical readouts from across human space. 3 separate battle groups had simultaneously altered course, all heading toward Neutron Star XK739. The lead elements would arrive in less than 18 hours. Veltar sank deeper into his chair, his antenna drooping with resignation. "Send alerts to all council medical stations in the sector. Prepare trauma counselors, emergency psychiatric teams, and hazard pay authorizations." The human fleet was coming. The Zilani would probably survive. Everything else was negotiable. Captain. Sujin gripped her command chair as the mining vessel Crater Maker pushed deeper into space that no sane pilot would dare enter. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the calm efficiency of people who spent their lives in places that wanted to kill them. The Neutron Star XK739 dominated their forward view screen, a spinning ball of compressed matter that warped space itself. Radiation readings climbed steadily as they approached, but Sujin's crew barely glanced at the warnings. They had spent years mining asteroids in the shadow of black holes. This was just another day at the office. Hull temperature rising too. "Dangerous levels," reported Engineer Young Ho from his station, sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's climate control. "We're at 80% of manufacturer recommendations." Sujin checked her modifications display. Watching green lights confirmed that every system was operating within acceptable parameters. The Crater Maker wasn't built like other ships, where most vessels prioritized comfort and efficiency. This beast was designed for pure survival. "Define dangerous," she replied calmly, adjusting their approach vector. "Are we melting?" "No, sir." "Hull integrity holding steady. Then we're fine." The mining ship had been rebuilt from the ground up for operations near stellar anomalies. Triple-layered armor plating, radiation-absorbing hull coatings, and power systems that could function in gravitational fields strong enough to stretch normal metal like taffy. What killed other ships just made the Crater Maker work harder. The reinforced viewports, they could see their target. The Zelani research vessel Gentle Current tumbled slowly in decaying orbit. Its elegant curves and crystalline sensor arrays a stark contrast to the brutal environment surrounding it. The alien ship looked like a work of art, beautiful, delicate, and completely helpless. "Look at that thing," muttered Navigator Dongwu. "It's like they built it for a museum display." Sujin nodded grimly. The aliens designed their ships for exploration and discovery, prioritizing scientific instruments and comfortable living spaces. Humans built their ships to survive getting shot at while flying through radiation storms. The difference in philosophy was obvious. "Captain, communications." Officer Minsu called out urgently. "The alien vessel is hailing us." The main screen flickered, revealing the blue-skinned face of a Zelani captain. His usually vibrant coloring had faded to pale gray, and his large eyes were wide with terror. Behind him, Sujin could see his bridge crew scrambling frantically at failing control panels. "Human vessel," the alien captain gasped, his voice shaking with fear. "Please maintain safe distance from our position. The radiation levels in this area will cook your crew alive within minutes. Your ship's hull cannot possibly withstand." Sujin cut him off with a gesture, then turned to her helm officer. "Take us in closer, Junho. Let's get a better look at their damage." The crater maker dove deeper into the neutron star's gravity well, its hull plates beginning to glow cherry red from absorbed radiation. Warning alarms briefly sounded before Young Ho silenced them with practiced ease. On the screen, the Zelani captain watched in horror as the human ship ignored every law of physics and common sense, plunging straight toward certain death with complete confidence. Admiral Keong stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought mountain breaker, watching through reinforced viewports as the most dangerous rescue operation in galactic history unfolded. What had started as a simple distress call had somehow transformed into the largest human fleet deployment in the Outer Rim territories. 17 warships now surrounded the neutron star, their hulls glowing from absorbed radiation that would have fried any other species' electronics. The Admiral's tactical display showed vessel positions that defied every rule of safe space navigation. Yet his crews reported nominal status across the board. "Admiral, destroyer wavecutter reports successful gravity anchor deployment," announced Tactical Officer Soyoung from her station. Her fingers danced across holographic controls as she coordinated the complex operation. "They've established a stable position at 12,000 kilometers from the star's surface." Keong nodded approvingly. The gravity anchors were a recent human innovation, designed to hold position in gravitational fields that would tear normal ships apart. Other species had called the technology impossible when human engineers first proposed it. Of course, other species said that about most human technology. Heavy cruiser Stonefist, reporting tractor grid activation, Soyoung continued. "They have the Zelani vessel locked in a stable beam matrix." The Admiral watched as massive human ships took positions around the failing alien research vessel, like protective guardians. The Stonefist alone outmassed the delicate Zelani ship by a factor of 10. Its brutal military design, a stark contrast to the alien's elegant scientific curves. "Sir, engineering ships are beginning emergency construction protocols," reported Communications Officer Jamin. "Captain Wu Jin requests permission to deploy the mobile dock assembly." "Granted," Keong replied without hesitation. "Tell them to build it big. We might be here a while." Within hours, the impossible began to take shape. Human construction. Vessels swarmed through space that should have been instantly lethal, assembling a temporary space station from prefabricated modules. Robotic welders worked in conditions that would cook organic matter in seconds, while automated cargo haulers delivered supplies through gravitational fields strong enough to compress diamond. Aboard the failing Gentle Current, Captain Raikal watched the human activity with growing confusion and alarm. His bridge crew gathered around the sensor displays, tentacles and antennae twitching nervously as they observed the massive construction project. "Captain," whispered his science officer. A thin Zilani, whose usually bright purple skin, had turned pale with stress. "They're not just rescuing us. Look at the construction patterns." Rykal studied the data streams flowing across his screens. The humans weren't building a temporary rescue platform. The massive structure taking shape around them had docking bays, weapon hardpoints, and deep space communication arrays. It was a permanent installation. "They're settling here," Rykal breathed, his voice filled with disbelief. "In the middle of a neutron star's radiation field, they're building a base." His science officer's tentacles quivered with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Captain, I've been monitoring their scanning operations. The humans are downloading all of our neutron star research data. Every measurement, every theoretical calculation, every gravitational map we've created over the past 6 months." The captain's eyes widened as understanding dawned. This was never about rescue, was it? Through the viewports, they watched human ships moving with purpose and coordination that spoke of careful planning. The rescue had been convenient timing, but the humans had clearly been interested in this system long before the gentle current had sent its distress call. Engineering Chief Daehyun pulled his helmet off as he stepped through the airlock onto the Zilani research vessel. The atmosphere inside was breathable, though filled with the acrid smell of overloaded electronics and failing life support systems. His team of 6 human engineers followed behind him, carrying heavy toolkits and welding equipment that looked brutally industrial compared to the ship's delicate interior. The Zilani vessel was everything Daehyun had expected from alien civilian construction. Smooth curves everywhere, soft lighting, and technology that prioritized elegance over durability. Beautiful crystalline displays lined the walls, showing complex scientific data in patterns that were probably mesmerizing under normal conditions. Right now, half of them were dead or flickering erratically. "Chief, look at this mess," called out Technician Yoonji from across the corridor. She was crouched next to what appeared to be the main power distribution hub, a delicate lattice of crystal and light that pulsed weakly with dying energy. Daehyun knelt beside her, examining the alien technology with the eye of someone who had spent 20 years keeping human ships running in impossible conditions. The power coupling was a masterpiece of engineering artistry, designed to channel energy through resonating crystal matrices that probably worked flawlessly in normal space. "This power coupling is completely decorative," Yoonji muttered, pulling out her plasma cutter. "It's not even properly shielded against radiation interference." Without hesitation, she began cutting away the crystalline components, sparks flying as the delicate alien tech was reduced to glittering debris. Daehyun nodded approvingly as she started installing a heavy-duty human power conduit in its place. "The whole ship is decorative," Daehyun replied, surveying the rest of the corridor. "Good thing we brought real equipment." His team spread out through the vessel, each engineer attacking different systems with the methodical efficiency of people who regularly performed miracles under pressure. They had done this before on a dozen different alien ships, always with the same result. Beautiful alien technology got replaced by ugly human solutions that actually worked. Technician Wusong was busy converting the ship's elegant scientific sensors into structural support beams, welding them directly into the weakened hull framework. The delicate instruments had been designed to detect minute gravitational variations across vast distances. Now they were keeping the ship from being crushed by neutron star gravity. Meanwhile, Engineer Minho was rerouting the entire life support system through the cargo holds, bypassing the main environmental processors that had failed hours ago. Human life support didn't rely on sophisticated atmospheric processors and recycling systems. It was built around the simple principle that air was air, and as long as you could pump it around the ship, people wouldn't suffocate. The most dramatic modification was taking place near the ship's damaged stern. where technician Sojin was turning hull breaches into impromptu thruster ports instead of sealing the hulls. She was installing directional vents that could use escaping atmosphere as emergency propulsion. Every single modification violated established galactic safety standards, engineering protocols, and probably several interstellar treaties. Daehyun couldn't have cared less. Human engineers didn't build to standards. They built to survive. "You're destroying everything," protested a voice behind him. Daehyun turned to see Elhan, the Zalani chief engineer, watching in horror as his beautiful ship was transformed into something unrecognizable. The alien's blue skin had turned almost white with distress, and his large eyes were wide with shock. "We're making it work," Daehyun corrected calmly, gesturing for Wusong to weld support beams directly across the observation deck's viewing windows. "Pretty doesn't survive neutron stars." Dr. Hyen-Woo stood in the secure briefing room aboard the Mountain Breaker, surrounded by holographic displays showing the most detailed neutron star analysis ever compiled. The data streaming in from the Zalani research vessel was beyond anything human science had previously achieved. 6 months of careful alien observations had just fallen into their hands. "Admiral, this information is extraordinary," Hyen-Woo explained, manipulating the three-dimensional star chart with practiced movements. "Look at these gravitational lensing calculations." Admiral Kyung leaned forward, studying the complex mathematical models floating in the air between them. The neutron star's massive gravitational field bent space itself, creating focusing effects that could be weaponized in ways other species had never imagined. The gravitational lensing effects could focus particle beams across incredible distances, Hyen-Woo continued, highlighting specific areas of the data. A weapon platform positioned here could target enemy vessels 3-star systems away by using the neutron star as a cosmic magnifying glass. The Admiral's weathered face showed no emotion, but his eyes gleamed with strategic possibilities. "What about defensive applications?" "Even better," the scientist replied, bringing up radiation signature analyses. "The neutron star's natural emissions create perfect cover for fleet movements. Any ship hiding in this radiation field would be completely invisible to standard sensors." Kyung studied the tactical implications while watching human construction crews work outside the briefing room windows. Massive industrial ships were assembling what looked like a permanent deep space facility, complete with docking bays large enough to service entire battle groups. "This system could become our staging area for Outer Rim operations," Hyen-Woo suggested. "We could base an entire fleet here without anyone knowing it exists." 3 decks below, aboard the rescued vessel, Gentle Current, Captain Rykal was reaching his own disturbing conclusions. He had spent the past several hours reviewing communication logs and sensor readings from before their distress call, piecing together a timeline that made his stomach turn cold. "Navigator Peldine," he called to his second-in-command. "Show me the long-range sensor data from 3 months ago." The Zalani officer's tentacles moved nervously across his control panel, bringing up archived readings on the main display. Rykal studied the information carefully, his trained eye picking out details that had seemed unimportant at the time. There, he pointed to a faint sensor ghost at the edge of their detection range, and there, and here. Peldon followed his captain's finger, his own eyes widening with understanding. The readings showed periodic gravitational disturbances, consistent with large spacecraft operating under stealth conditions. Someone had been watching their research station for months. "The humans didn't stumble across our distress call," Reich whispered, his voice filled with dawning horror. "They've been monitoring this system since we arrived. We were just convenient timing," Peldon replied quietly, his tentacles curling with anxiety. Outside their viewports, human construction ships continued their work with frightening efficiency. What had begun as a rescue operation was clearly transforming into something much larger and more permanent. Weapons platforms were taking shape alongside the growing space station. their targeting arrays already calibrated for the neutron star's unique gravitational effects. The rescue had become an occupation, and the Zilani crew were witnessing the birth of humanity's newest forward operating base, Pirate. Captain Zekthar dropped his raider fleet out of hyperspace, at the edge of the XK-739 system, expecting to find the usual chaos of an emergency rescue operation. His 3 ships were loaded with boarding equipment and salvage tools, ready to pick through whatever wreckage remained after the aliens inevitably failed to save their research vessel. Instead, his sensors immediately lit up with contact warnings. 17 human warships surrounded the neutron star in defensive formations that made no sense to any reasonable military mind. The pirates were flying vessels built for hit-and-run attacks on cargo convoys, not pitched battles against organized fleet elements. "Captain," his navigator squeaked nervously, "those are human military ships, big ones." Zekthar studied his tactical display with growing confusion. The human vessels were positioned impossibly close to the neutron star, operating in radiation fields that should have fried their electronics and gravitational zones that should have crushed their hulls. Yet every ship showed full operational status. "They're insane," he muttered. "No one fights that close to a neutron star." Before he could order a retreat, his communication system crackled to life. A human voice, calm and professional, filled his bridge. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Inho of the Terran destroyer Sharp Edge. You are entering a restricted military operation zone. Withdraw immediately or be fired upon." Zekthar laughed, displaying his sharp teeth in what he thought was an intimidating gesture. These humans clearly didn't understand what they were dealing with. His raider ships were fast and maneuverable, designed to outrun larger vessels in open space. "Human fools," he broadcast back, "that radiation will cook you alive. We'll be picking through your wreckage within the hour." The response came not in words, but in action. The destroyer Sharp Edge suddenly accelerated directly toward the neutron star, diving deeper into the gravity well instead of pulling back to safe distance. Zekthar watched in disbelief as the human ship disappeared into radiation levels that should have been instantly fatal. "Where did they go?" his sensor officer called out frantically. "I've lost all contacts." The human ships had vanished from his screens, using the neutron star's massive radiation output to mask their positions. Zekthar realized with growing panic that he was now fighting an enemy he couldn't see. In an environment where his own ships were helpless, Lieutenant Commander Na Young coordinated the attack from her frigate, Quick Strike, using the neutron star's gravitational field like a weapon. Her ship rode the edge of the gravity well, gaining impossible acceleration as she slingshot around the stellar mass toward the confused pirates. "Target the lead raider," she ordered her weapons officer. "Use the star's magnetic field to focus our particle beams." The human ships moved through space that would tear normal vessels apart, dancing between gravitational anomalies with the confidence of predators in their natural hunting ground. They used the neutron star's own energy to supercharge their weapons, turning stellar radiation into focused destruction. The first pirate ship exploded in a flash of superheated plasma, its hull crushed by gravitational forces it never saw coming. The second tried to flee, only to find human vessels emerging from impossible angles, appearing out of radiation shadows like ghosts. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, debris from 3 pirate ships drifted slowly toward the neutron star's surface. While human warships resumed their positions as if nothing had happened, the pirates never stood a chance. Science. Officer Palmer floated through the corridors of his rescued ship, watching the human rescue teams work with the fascination of an anthropologist studying a completely alien species. The week-long extraction process had given him unprecedented access to observe human behavior under conditions that should have terrified any rational being. What he witnessed challenged everything that Zilani understood about survival instincts and self-preservation. where his own people saw certain death lurking around every corner. These humans seemed to view the neutron star environment as nothing more than an interesting workplace challenge. Engineer Jae-sung was currently replacing power couplings in a section of the ship where radiation levels required full environmental protection. The human worked methodically in his bulky suit, completely unperturbed by readings that would send most species fleeing in panic. His movements were casual, almost bored, as he handled components that glowed with absorbed stellar energy. "Doesn't this concern you?" Palmer asked, through his translator, gesturing toward the radiation warning displays flashing red throughout the corridor. Jae-sung looked up from his work, his face visible through the helmet's faceplate. He seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. It's just another day working near a star. Back home, I used to do maintenance on solar collection platforms. This is actually easier because there's no solar wind to deal with." The casual response left Palmer speechless. On his homeworld, working within 100 million kilometers of their gentle sun required extensive safety protocols and rotating shifts to minimize exposure. These humans were treating proximity to a neutron star-like routine industrial maintenance. Medical Officer Seo Jin provided an even more disturbing example of human attitudes toward mortal danger. Palmer watched her make rounds through the ship, checking on both human and Zilani crew members with the same calm professionalism. She administered anti-radiation medications to her own people like they were daily vitamins, showing no more concern than if she were treating a minor headache. "Your medical protocols are extremely casual for such dangerous conditions," Palmer observed, watching her scan a human engineer whose radiation exposure readings would have required immediate hospitalization on any Zilani vessel. Seo Jin glanced at her handheld scanner and shrugged. "He's well within acceptable limits. A little radiation exposure actually stimulates the immune system. But don't you fear death?" Palmer pressed, unable to comprehend such casual disregard for obvious danger. "Your species operates in conditions that would kill my people within minutes." Seojin paused in her work, considering the question with genuine thoughtfulness. When she answered, her tone was matter-of-fact rather than boastful. "Death fears us," she said simply. "We're from Earth. Everything on our home planet tries to kill you from the moment you're born. Venomous insects, predatory animals, toxic plants, unstable weather, volcanic activity, radiation from our own sun. This neutron star environment is actually vacation compared to what we deal with at home." Palmer felt his skin pale too, almost white as the implications sank in. These humans had evolved on a world so hostile that neutron star proximity felt relaxing to them. What kind of death world had created a species that considered mortal danger a normal part of daily life? He began recording detailed behavioral notes in his personal files, documenting every interaction with growing urgency. His people needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with when it came to humanity. 6 months had passed since the neutron star incident, and the ripple effects continued to transform galactic emergency protocols in ways no one had anticipated. Admiral Tejo sat in his new command center aboard the permanent XK-739 station, reviewing reports that would have seemed impossible before humanity entered the galactic stage. The holographic display in front of him showed updated Galactic Council emergency response guidelines, and one particular entry made him smile with grim satisfaction. Right there in official council documentation was a new classification that hadn't existed. A year ago, Deathworld operations, contact Terran fleet immediately. It had taken 17 successful rescue missions to convince the galaxy's bureaucrats that humans weren't just lucky survivors, but the only species capable of operating in conditions that killed everyone else. 17 operations in environments that other civilizations had written off as impossible, from collapsing space stations near black holes to mining accidents in the hearts of radiation storms. Admiral called his aide, Officer Mi-young, approaching, with a datapad containing their latest assignment. "The Council has another emergency request for us," Tejo accepted the briefing documents, scanning through the details with practiced eyes. Another impossible situation that required the human touch. They want us to handle the Vorthan Nebula incident, Myung reported, her tone suggesting she already knew what his response would be. A civilian transport convoy got caught in an unexpected stellar collapse. The nebula is experiencing massive gravitational distortions and electromagnetic storms, radiation storms, and gravity anomalies. Tejo asked, though he was already reaching for his fleet deployment authorization codes. The works, sir. Plus temporal distortions and subspace fractures that are tearing apart rescue ships from 3 different species. Tejo leaned back in his command chair, considering the tactical challenges ahead. Most military commanders would spend hours planning approaches to such dangerous conditions. For human fleet operations, this was just another day ending in Y. Standard Tuesday, he said with a slight grin. Prep the fleet. Tell engineering to load the heavy gravitational anchors and bring extra radiation shielding. Sounds like we might need to set up another permanent station. Through the command center's viewports, he could see the gentle current docked at the station's civilian berths. The former Zalani research vessel had been completely rebuilt using human engineering principles, transforming it into a mobile research platform that could operate in conditions that would destroy normal scientific ships. Captain Reichel, now, served as the primary cultural liaison between the Zalani government and human military forces, a position that hadn't existed before their accidental encounter. His crew had become unofficial ambassadors, sharing their first-hand experience of human rescue operations with species across the galaxy. The captain had learned an important lesson about Deathworld pragmatism during his week in human hands. When these particular rescuers answered distress calls, certain things were absolutely guaranteed. Survival was non-negotiable. The rescue would succeed, regardless of environmental conditions, enemy action, or laws of physics that suggested otherwise. Everything else was completely negotiable. Property damage, psychological trauma, violation of safety regulations, unauthorized territorial occupation, and insurance claims that bankrupted entire sectors were all acceptable collateral. Damage in pursuit of the primary mission objective. The galaxy had found its emergency response team, whether it wanted one or not. And as reports of human rescue operations spread through civilized space, one thing became increasingly clear. When humans decided to save someone, the universe itself had to step aside.